Hello again. We are continuing with our trip with the unit in R9. We got a firmware update. Looks like it actually improved the performance a little further. I noticed, and I confirmed that with Uniden. So I'm glad to see there's actually more performance there that they're extracting. So very, very good. So we're collecting our experiences. We'll ultimately share them when we get the go-ahead here in a more formal review. But, one of the things I wanted to do is, like the last video, we've done a couple videos about some encounters and what I've done or what we've done. But I want to talk about one that I think I maybe have mentioned online some time ago, but never really did a video on it, so I want to do that now. And that is how to drive. What I find works for me, how to drive with a radar detector in the evening versus during the day. So I'm sure, as all y'all know, when you drive with a radar detector at night, what I'm finding obviously is that the roads often are less traveled, particularly if it's really late. So you're not going to get as much of an advance warning of somebody getting targeted, let's say with IO radar up ahead. And those who like to use rabbits, although I don't do that myself, but for those who like to look for rabbits that they can follow and pace, you're going to have less of an opportunity to do that in the evening. So people have asked me, well, how do you drive? Well, obviously at night you can't see what's lurking up ahead, whether there's a patrol vehicle coming the other direction necessarily. You can't really distinguish. Or in particular, if they're sitting, like in Pennsylvania, they run pretty much stationary K-band, and that's all, low powered. So very hard to detect. They're very selective in targeting, and every encounter is basically an ambush situation. So at night, the traffic isn't going to be there. There's one over here in Maryland we're currently at, but he's sitting out there, state police. So how do you deal with that? Well, generally, when I'm driving at night, not always, but I'll adjust my speed downward a little bit. So, whatever speed you drive during the day, maybe you do speed -5 or something like that. So I just generally back off, if you're happening to be speeding, okay? I'm not saying you are, but if you happen to be. The other thing I do like on an interstate, and this is a good tip I think that y'all can employ if you haven't yet, is with truckers. So generally, truckers are going to be out later at night driving. Some of those do that. They drive through the night because the roads are quieter. And so what I'll do is, if I'm driving and there's nothing between me and a trucker, I'll watch that trucker. He's not necessarily speeding, but I'm watching the trucker.
In 5.9 miles, take exit 27, I-495 west, towards Silver Spring, Bethesda, to US 1.
Bright lights that people could see, that's just a normal thing to do. And then what I do when I see trucks, I do what I call a slingshot effect. So whatever speed I'm doing, if I see a truck, I sort of slingshot up to the next truck. And then I pass that truck, and then I'm backing off a little bit, and then I wait until I see the next truck, if you will. So I sort of, it's like jumping a stone on a creek or something, stone to stone. So I move, and then I'm sort of like using each of the truckers, almost like a rabbit, but they're not speeding, but using them as break points. And I think that served my interest pretty well. And so that would be something that I would suggest perhaps you try, and you may find that works for you. Another thing, and I'll use this because of my experiences in Pennsylvania, again, in PA, only state troopers can use radar. They can only use it from a stationary position, and it's K-band. So no local police, despite laws and attempts or bills to try to forward through the Senate and the representatives of the state, they've pretty much failed all the time. So laser, not found, or moving radar, or even local police. So I bring up the local police.
Watch out, vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Because local police are not permitted to use radar anyway. And I think I heard a story for that is because I think there was somebody in the politics Maybe there was a ticket, I don't know. And they didn't like whatever. So whatever the reason is. We also had just for this aside little story, we had, and I liked him, Mayor Rendell. He was quite a character, Philadelphia. And then he became governor of the state for a while. And I actually met him once at a political event. Nice guy, really nice guy. But the funny thing is, the state capital of Pennsylvania is Harrisburg. Well, Harrisburg's about 2 hours, 2.5 hour drive, depending on how fast you go, to Philadelphia. So obviously Mayor Rendell, or Governor Rendell, had a strong connection to Philadelphia, continue to have political connections to Philadelphia. So it wasn't uncommon for him to travel from Harrisburg to Philly, right? But he had a motorcade as the governor, a little bit of protection, his own driver, some stuff. And Rendell was pulled over for more than one time for like doing 95, going from Harrisburg. You know, I think he had a nickname for that, but you know, I thought that was cool. The hell with it. He's driving, he's, you know, whatever, in his motorcade, he's got to get somewhere, so fine. And back then, I think the speed limits were pretty much 55.
Watch out, vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Maybe some select areas where they were 65, but pretty much. But be that as it may, Pennsylvania's a funny state, unlike many others. Only local state police can use radar, so interstates pretty much. That's where you have to worry about a radar detector. So I say that to say this. When you're driving in Pennsylvania on a secondary highway where there's municipalities and townships and county, let's say, not state, a radar detector is really not going to be useful to you, okay? There's some photo radar, like on...
in 1 mile, use the right 2 lanes to take exit 27, I-495 west, towards Silver Spring, Bethesda, to US 1.
And then you use your GPS. But when you're driving in a small town, there are a couple things that Pennsylvania does. They have VASCAR, okay? And what is VASCAR? VASCAR is a time distance computer, but can be operated when in motion, okay? So they don't have to be stationary and clock you. They can do it that way, but oftentimes they will follow you, right? So your radar detector is not going to be effective because there's no radar involved. And at night, people often think, well, they're not going to be able to use VASCAR at night. But the truth is, it's actually easier.
Exit right to exit 27, I-495 west, towards Silver Spring, Bethesda, to US 1.
Pattern ends. And what they do is they measure, they pick a spot, can be anything, where they start, and they start a clock. And then when they get to that spot, they start their own clock. And then they pick another spot, and then they stop the clock on you, and then they come to the next spot, and then they stop their clock on them. And they can get a very, very accurate speed of your speed, even to the 10th of a mile, and it's called VASCAR. Now, they also have to calibrate their speedometers so it all ties in, and they have to get that done on a relatively frequent basis. So you could basically beat a ticket if they haven't followed the calibration. So that's always something to bring up when it was calibrated. And sometimes I think they put it on the ticket. Generally, they have that figured out. Another thing you'll find in Pennsylvania, like at night, is painted lines. And they use simple stopwatches. So again, that's a time distance calculation to get your speed. And that's very easy to fall prey to that. They can hide, they can get a safe. So if you're ever driving, even with a radar detector, and you're like in the state of Pennsylvania where you see those lines, and they could be 4 car lengths, they don't have to be far, just enough for them to get enough of a clock to get your speed. You have to be mindful of that because, again, no radar.
Continue straight for 25 minutes to I-495 South Express, easy pass only.
I on the fly, and it may have saved me. I don't know, but I'll share it with you. One night I was driving somewhere in Bucks County, I think it was, south of New Hope, and I was coming down, I think it was 202, something like that. And I was coming over, and I noticed, because I do watch a lot side to side, right? At night especially, in an area where I know they do this kind of thing. And I noticed a patrol vehicle in a parking lot, like of a gas station, just sitting perpendicular to the road. And I realized that I crossed the line with my headlights, and I knew that. So I figured he was using...
Watch out, vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Or VASCAR in a stationary position, whatever. So what I did is, and I knew I was going faster than the limit, perhaps enough to get a speeding ticket, 15, 13, whatever. So what I did is I flashed my high beams on. And what did that do? That changes the beam pattern of the lights. So by, flooding the area with lights from high beams, if he were tracking me with VASCAR or something where he's looking for that trailing light of a regular low beam, I would screw up that timing with doing that. And he never pulled out. So there you go. What else can I tell you about driving at night? I have another VASCAR story. Radar detector. It's coming over the Ben Franklin Bridge. And it's in Philadelphia. Comes from New Jersey, 676. And I was, it's like a 3-lane bridge each way. It's a pretty big suspension bridge, and you come into Philadelphia that way. Well, the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, whatever they call it, like border, whatever, I forget the term, they can patrol, and they run VASCAR as well. Port Authority, I guess is what it is. So I was driving, and there was a guy behind me, and he ran VASCAR, and he clocked me at 72 point something, okay? The speed limit, I think, was 45 on the bridge. So it was 27 over, which in Pennsylvania, you're above 25, I think it's a 5-point violation. It's pretty big. So I took it to court. And again, I've told you this other story. I called my friend Craig Peterson, who's got an incredible amount of knowledge about enforcement over the years, going back to the 70s. And I asked for Craig to explain, do you have a manual or something on VASCAR so I could learn about it? Can I learn about its operation? And God bless him, he sent me one, and I went through it. And I was looking for technical errors, okay? So I did find one. And using the time distance calculation, and his system reported 72 point something on a ticket. My calculation indicated that it should have been 76. So we underreported the speed. So that's a violation. I mean, that's a technicality that is incorrect on the ticket, because the thing should be accurate to the 10th of a mile an hour. So I request a court hearing. Now, I don't know how this is going to go, arguing that you were going faster than what the officer reported. That was a risky proposition, but I did. I went downtown Philadelphia. The worst thing you want to be is in a city court, because it's brutal. But I finally get my turn to go up to the judge, and the officer who issued me the ticket wasn't there. But another officer was there in his place, which I don't know how they can really do that, because the prosecuting officer's not even there to testify against you. There's just somebody reading off of his notes. Well, I had the manual, and I said, this ticket is invalid, because if you see, and I showed him how this thing works. It's time distance. It's a time, it's a distance, and you get your speed. It's exact. And it was to the 10th of a mile an hour. His speed should have been 76.1, not 72.1. So we underreported the speed, probably because his track wasn't correct, or his equipment was faulty. That was my argument. Now, the other officer that was there was clueless. Didn't know anything about VASCAR. He's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, okay. And he goes, how do you know that? I said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm in IT. That's one of the things I do. I'm an engineer. I went to an engineering school. I know math. And I have the manual to prove my point. So at the end of the day, the judge was not happy about it, and he dismissed the charges. I mean, it was a 5-point ticket, so that was not an inconsequential ticket. The fine was pretty good size. And then he says to me, I believe you were speeding. And if I see you in my court again, I'm going to come at you. Big ticket, whatever. Never saw him again. He's just posturing himself. But that's another story. again, about driving at night, even if you don't have a detector or with a detector. So, you know, these are the things I wanted to alert you to, and just keep in mind these variety of different potential targeting situations and how you could be at risk. And hopefully some of my experience and the wisdom that I've imparted here can help save you from an unexpected encounter that will not be pleasant. So anyway, we're going to continue on with our testing of the R9. We're heading up to, once we're done down here, we're going to head up to Canada, and then we're going to be driving this bad boy in the eastern provinces of Canada on the way to Vancouver and ultimately up to Alaska. So we'll give you more tales from the road and or our experiences. So again, thanks for watching, and remember, drive safe, drive smart, drive protected. And what do you always say, Victoria? If you like the video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and when we put more of these up, you'll get immediately notified. So take care, God bless. Bye-bye.